In today's Neville Goddard conversation, we are going to discuss, based on Thursday's video, symbolism. And it is a language of the subconscious mind. The Bible, for example, I was taught at a very young age, was something that you would read before going to sleep, or at least this is what I was taught. And then you would live your life the next day and go back to perhaps the same information or whatever information you were inspired to go to in the Bible. And your experiences day to day, the life experiences, would make sense to you. The symbolism behind the words. And the depths of symbolism contained within the Bible, as well as many other kinds of spiritual texts, realized through experience. So what would happen is, and I always suggest this, you pick a goal, a vision, something that you desire to see brought forth, and you commit to it, and the goal is to see it all the way till completion, which we're going to talk about in this video as well. On the journey, we have a deeper understanding of the symbolic nature of reality. And we can refer back to the Bible to help us understand the symbolism that is presented within the book and translated over to understanding of the symbolism that we experience on the day-to-day journey. As we continue this process, we go through what sometimes I refer to as purification of the mind, releasing from certain kinds of limiting, disempowering interpretations about ourselves, reality, people, environment, information, and so forth, to find the accurate truth within by understanding the symbolism that is buried within the subconscious. So we use words, for example, symbolically. Ever since I was a kid, I was always fascinated by the power of words. Later on, I was stimulated to be more involved with words, to develop my public speaking skills. Brought me into a world of fascination in regards to sales, marketing, communication, neuro-linguistic programming, any kind of communication. I found this deep fascination with it because I recognized the symbolism behind the words and the sentences we put together and the communication and how it has an impression on our own subconscious mind to stimulate us into certain ways of being, certain perception of reality. Adjust our consciousness to be in alignment with prosperity-based consciousness, or the desired consciousness that is representative of the vision. Or we could say the vision is a symbolic representation of who we aspire to be. Symbolism can be defined as the practice or art of using an object or word to represent an abstract idea. An action, person, place, word, or object can have symbolic meanings to us and conjure up certain interpretations. And this is also tied into our discussions about what are we polarizing to? Essentially, what are we saying I am to? Now, Neville Goddard says it really well when he says, the world we enter at night is just as real as this one. He's talking about the world of dreams. And he says, like this world, everything there contains within itself the capacity for symbolic significance. At the end of the day or night, dream. Try to interpret it symbolically, as there is only one foundation for your dreams, and that is your own wonderful human imagination. Because the subconscious mind is authentically expressing. And as a result of what is being expressed authentically in our dreams, we can symbolically interpret that as our relationship with different aspects of our journey, past, present, and future, and help us understand what are we identifying with, what are we saying I am too. We also work with this information in state akin to sleep, or in states of mind, sometimes referred to as hypnagogic states, in which a person really understands the symbolic significance based on different aspects of the journey in relation to their vision. What happens is we release from certain bias-based, rigid interpretations of reality, and we go into more of a symbolic, mystical view of reality, and things make sense to us. It's one with the vision. It's a highly creative state in which the conscious mind is just active enough to be able to observe the interpretations or the symbolism, which is why it was suggested to me to read the Bible before going to sleep, because a few things were happening. Number one, I was looking at the words, the meanings, the stories in the Bible, and symbolically relating it over to my experiences each day. What was also happening was the stories that were contained within were symbolically stimulating my imagination prior to going to sleep, thus impressed the subconscious mind with those interpretations. This is also done through the practice of observations of our thoughts and beliefs as they surface on the day-to-day journey, releasing from judgment or shame regarding these thoughts and beliefs. Similar to what we talked about in the 7-Day Mental Diet by Emmett Fox. The goal is to understand what is within the subconscious interpretations. And we do this with more of a, you could say, detached view, rather than identifying with these thoughts or beliefs, observing them. Now, this is something that we get better at with practice, and another reason why I suggest making flow a priority. Because when you're in flow, you are a lot more lighthearted. You are less likely to be judgmental or shameful about the thoughts and beliefs you have within yourself that might be interpreted as holding you back from getting what you desire. Upon reflection of these thoughts and beliefs, we recognize that we are not those thoughts and those beliefs. And what we find ourselves recognizing as we observe this thought processes or beliefs play out in our mind without identifying with them is that we are transcendent to those thoughts, and we find ourselves automatically identifying with the perspective that we can identify with those thoughts if we'd like, or not identify with those thoughts. So then we automatically identify with the harmonious thoughts that are in harmony with the vision, such as I am deserved of, I am able to experience. This is tied into also what we've been discussing in relation to possibility. They say, some way, somehow, it is going to be possible. Symbolically interpreting the different aspects of reality from an accurate perspective, which is what I've been referring to over the last years as in harmony and in contribution to the vision. And we're more likely to understand more so different aspects of the Bible which Neville had interpreted for us and shared, such as, all you can possibly need or desire is already yours. You need no helper to give it to you. It is yours now. Call your desires into being by imagining and feeling your wish fulfilled. As the end is accepted, you become totally indifferent as to possible failure, for acceptance of the end wills the means to that end. So in a state akin to sleep, working with inner conversations, which is what I recommend, or affirmations, you go into a certain level of integration with those aspects of communication, visualization, and so forth. And that information is symbolically interpreted by the subconscious mind as a instruction. And then we experience what he refers to as the feeling of the wish fulfilled. We feel that it's done. Some way, somehow, we're going to experience this reality, as we discussed in last Sunday's Neville Goddard video. The parallel nature of reality. We go into a certain state of mind that is one with the vision, and we begin to think from and represent that state of mind that's one with the vision. Now, as mentioned, another reason why I suggest making flow a priority is because we can also do this in a awakened state where we are a lot more conscious than perhaps the state akin to sleep, and still enter back into the feeling of the wish fulfilled, such as the one that I had learned from Think and Grow Rich, which I share. It's very simple. I simply write down my definite chief aim on a card, and I carry it with me, and I'm still doing it till this day. I've had many definite chief aims, all of them which I desired to see brought forth were brought forth as a result of working with a similar process like this, except now we're refining it a lot more, because there are many different ways, thousands of different ways of saying the same thing, such as the case we will recognize when we go back to, for example, reading the Bible. We'll find that it's actually saying the same thing many different ways. So what I do is I pick up the card if I ever find myself to be reactive or dwelling in certain negative states of mind or anything that I would call disempowering. And I read the card, and right away I experience this feeling of the wish fulfilled. Because when I read this card, it implies that I already am the person that is one with this vision. And that some way, somehow, I'm going to go down the journey to realizing this vision, which Neville Goddard calls the bridge of incidence. And this is also another reason why I was taught at a young age to pray after reading the Bible before going to sleep. Because the interpretations of empowerment that were stimulated as a result of the symbolism interpretations as a result of reading, for example, Proverbs, would stimulate ideas of possibility in my mind. And from that stimulation of possibility, I would bring forth a deeper level of connection with what I desired and the visions in relation to the desire. And those would become the prayers, as he states here. When you emerge from the moment of prayer, it is as though you were shown the happy and successful end of a play, although you were not shown how that end was achieved. However, having witnessed that end, regardless of any anticlimactic sequence, you will remain calm and secure in the knowledge that the end has been perfectly defined. So, what then I would notice is that there would be a sense of calm, which would be the relationship of the feeling of the wish fulfilled between my being and the vision, secure in the knowledge that the end has been perfectly defined. Now, interesting, all those things that I prayed for when I was a child end up becoming true. There would be things such as, for example, when I was in grade school, for whatever the reason may be, it didn't seem that I had an ability to pay attention in class and study the information, so thus I didn't do very well on tests and exams and so forth. And the interpretations from the teachers were that I was slow, that I had a hard time processing information. I believed within myself that some way, somehow, the prayer would be answered, that I would rise up to a certain level of intelligence, where I would be able to do those things that the smarter kids were doing in school. Because as I moved into my teenage years, I then recognized that there were different styles of learning. It seemed to me before I was being fit into a box of learning styles, and that if I did not adjust to those learning styles, I was considered slow. But then later on, I found different learning styles and learning modalities, such as mind mapping, which is what I use, the format learning model, and many other learning models that resonate very deeply with me to bring forth a higher degree of processing information at faster speeds, comprehending it, retaining it, actualizing that information, integrating it to higher degrees. And now it seems like I am surrounded by large volumes of complex information in which it seems very easy to process this information. A stark difference from the childhood experiences of how I related to complex information. And this brought me into deeper understandings about how our subconscious mind works, the symbolism of how we interpret ourselves in relation to information, and the different kinds of learning modalities and tools that are more aligned symbolically with how we interpret things and actually contribute to a higher level of comprehension and retention. So thus I vouch for the power of prayer. And so I came across the book Think and Grow Rich. And in a way, I treated Think and Grow Rich like it was the Bible. I would read it before going to sleep. I would apply the information, go back to the book, and I would understand it at deeper levels. Symbolically, it would represent information that was within me. Symbolically, it would stimulate certain hunches, inspiration, ideas within me. Such is the case later on in the journey when I discovered Neville Goddard's information, the book The Kabbalion, and so forth. And this journey continues. And the same process applied. I would go into certain symbolic interpretations of information. And through these symbolic interpretations of the information, I would change within. The mind would rearrange. And as the mind would rearrange, it would translate into the success, the results, and so forth. All areas of my life as a result of working with symbolically understanding information from within, which is why I always suggest and recommend connecting back to your inner voice, because within yourself, you're able to look at the information that's presented to you, and you transform, as he says here. To be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change. But your thoughts cannot change unless you have new ideas, for you think from your ideas. All transformation begins with an intense burning desire to be transformed. The burning desire when I was a child was not to be having these experiences where I go to school and felt that the information was too overwhelming. I was not smart enough, and so forth. This burning desire started to stimulate certain interpretations on what I was reading. The Bible, Think and Grow Rich, and so forth, whatever kind of information. And through this stimulus, the mind began to change. The mind was transformed. Thoughts began to change. So he says the first step in renewing of the mind is desire. As was also started in the book Think and Grow Rich in the beginning, the indication that desire is the starting point for all achievements. He says you must first want to be different before you can begin to change yourself. The desire to be other than what you are. Now, this idea of other than what you are, upon reflection, is actually the recognition that I was becoming, over the years, more of who I truly am. I believe in an ideal version of ourselves that exists. And more so each day we step into this ideal version in which we seem at home. and then all things are added from this ideal version. This happens through this journey, which sometimes I also refer to as the purification of the mind, which is the release of disempowering interpretations, assumptions, beliefs in relation to ourselves, in relation to people, environment, circumstance, and information, which is guided from within via our intuition and our ability internally to symbolically interpret reality from the perspective of ideal and in harmony with our vision. This is how we go through the process of the renewal of the mind. And this renewal of the mind is something that what we're actually doing is identifying with, saying, I am too, the ideal perspectives, beliefs, interpretations regarding aspects of reality that allow us to maintain the feeling of the wish fulfilled, as he refers to, on the journey to realizing our vision, thus experiencing even more flow. And when a person experiences even more flow, they can automatically slip into a state akin to sleep or certain states of consciousness where they receive vivid hunches, inspirations, and interpretations symbolically of reality that seem to be there all the time. Think of it for a moment. Reflect back on your journey, on a time on your journey where you were deep in the flow and everything just made sense to you. The people, what they were saying, it made sense. You could read between the lines. The information that you were consuming seems like you were consuming it in an accelerated way. The same is to be said about interpreting reality or experiencing day-to-day the journey to bringing forth the business success, for example. When you're in a state of flow, you're able to symbolically interpret the information that's presented to you from an ideal perspective to further renew the mind, or we can call this purification of the mind. Now, as we know, Neville Goddard was heavily inspired by William Blake. And he quotes, Blake saw everything in his life as a symbol. To him, the sun was not a round disk in the sky, but a host of angels singing, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty. Always thinking in symbols, twofold vision was always his. And then he goes on to say, the Bible is not just beautiful poetry. It is the inspired word of God, written by poets. They have given enlarged meaning to normal words. After working with the Neville Goddard information, I found myself rekindled back to reading the Bible or other kinds of spiritual texts, because I recognized that those that wrote it were fitting a lot of meaning in the words. There was an enormous amount of symbolism and deep revelations that will be unraveled through the process of the individual's rearrangement of the mind. They would understand the symbolism more so. And if they go back and read the same thing and it appeared the same way, then what they would then commit to is further integration of the information, which means committing to the vision, doing the things you have to do each day to produce the results. Just like how we do this with business books or personal development books. We apply the information, we go back, and the information will present itself with a higher degree of nuances or from a different slant or perspective to reveal some deeper truths, you could say a different way of saying the same thing, which will further help us symbolically understand further aspects of our reality, which we've been calling raising up our level of awareness. We're able to see the greater relationships or even more nuanced perspectives of the effects in the outer world and the cause within. So thus, it's very important then to look at certain information from the perspective of symbolism, as I had tied this into the title of this mind map here. You can have what you want, find it within yourself. Trust yourself that you have the ability to know from within, to understand from within. that you have the ability to reflect based on the symbolism within, and then allow that symbolism to maintain feeling of the wish fulfilled as well as guide you to the destination. We can also call this pattern recognition. In the world of entrepreneurship, we call this pattern recognition. And even when we were teaching the speed reading workshops, we call this pattern recognition. The ability to see patterns in reality and make decisions. And some of you who are in the investment space might understand what I'm talking about. Entrepreneurs certainly understand that there's a lot of different opportunities, a lot of different things you could do to build your business. However, you're going to relate to what is the most optimal, generally speaking, highest leverage, greatest ability to produce yield. And that is found by looking at reality from a certain lens. The lens of possibility is one of them, but the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the state of mind that's one with the vision. Because then you're able to see these connections as you understand the symbolic meaning behind the information or the opportunities that are presented. Intuitively, you're able to, as Neville Goddard had also brought up, look beyond the evidence of the five senses and relate what is being experienced to be in harmony with the vision. So let's go ahead and conclude this discussion. We will further be discussing this kind of information from the perspective of symbolism and aspects within the subconscious mind related to symbolism. And I trust you found this to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an affirmation to weave it all together and applied on the day-to-day journey to bringing forth your vision. You can say, I realize that I have a greater ability to identify the symbolic interpretations in relation to information as I continue to bring forth my vision, stay committed to my ideal, and maintain the feeling of the wish fulfilled by recognizing that all information presented is symbolically in harmony and in contribution to my vision. I recognize that I have the ability to understand and interpret different aspects of what plays out, what is in my imagination, and see it as in harmony and in contribution symbolically to the ideal state of mind, which is one with my feeling of the wish fulfilled. This is stimulated by desire. The desire that I receive within inspires a vision, and on the process of committing to, I begin to renew the mind, to transform mind, to rearrange the mind, to develop a higher degree of astuteness, to look beyond the evidence of the five senses and understand the beautiful poetry and inspired words of those that have ingrained symbolic interpretation in mystical texts, books, and other kinds of information that shows up on the journey, that reveals itself to be in harmony and in contribution with my vision. Through the process, I'm able to understand the language of my subconscious mind. As a result, building a deeper relationship with my subconscious mind. Through the process, maintaining a higher degree of peace, harmony, and flow on the journey. Allowing myself to identify with certain thoughts, beliefs, and interpretations that are in harmony with my vision. Recognizing that I am deserved and one with my vision, transcending past the evidence of the five senses and understanding the symbolic interpretations via the sixth sense. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.